Here we are. Got twin micas. And your screen is two of you right next to each other. I just saw Thomas in the invite that was in my Outlook. And he's trying to figure out how this all went. We forked the streams, like.
My app crashed and I got booted, but now I guess I'm showing up twice. No, maybe just one second.
There it goes.
So sorry about that confusion. I had updated the Zoom invite based on something that was the first topic of Jacob's of where are the recordings. But the Outlook calendar was supposed to, or like the calendar invite was supposed to be updated to contain the new link.
I expect at the end of my career, when I'm in my, probably at this rate 80s,
Yeah.
This will still be a problem.
I think
It has been my whole career, and I'm sure it's going to be for the rest of my career.
So I'm a little confused though on. Yeah, I can see that the invite still has the old.
Fell out of my calendar.
I guess who has who has access to fix the Tinkerbell contributors meeting invite? Marky said he had changed it, so I guess his attempt to change it probably only affected his version. So
you mean not the Google Doc, you're talking about the calendar invite.
The calendar invite.
Oh, mine is old because it's not from the original invite.
Oh.
So that's my bad, because I didn't get the original invite in my Outlook box, so I just created one so I'd remember.
Oh, so here's even more confusion. Okay, I see that the actual invite sent to the mailing list, the location is correct, but the body has the wrong link.
We should probably, this is a good reason to move the time just to get this all.
I'll ask. Marky was actually at least able to change that invite. But yeah, calendars suck, especially across organizations.
It auto dials you. I don't know if I would like that.
It basically, like a minute before any meeting starts up, it just pops up like, hey, do you want to attend this meeting? With a ring.
Well, I guess that's not too bad.
I kind of like that.
It's like, yeah. It only sucks when you have like,
fell out. Go ahead.
If you've not declined meetings and you have like 3 or 4 overlaps, it's like 3 or 4 like rings that are like overlapping as well. Like they don't unify the audio. So yeah.
Nice.
You're like, wait, I'm trying to decline it.
I have a pull request. Wait, no, it's probably mine.
All right, Jacob,
I just get excited when I get a pull request on one of my repos.
Oh, all right. I'm going to start the recording. I don't know where it's gonna go, because anyways, that'll be my first question. All right.
It's already recording, and this one's going to Thomas.
Oh, did somebody already click recording?
It
I
may have been
actually-
set up to auto record.
Yeah, I actually set it to auto record in the beginning. Maybe
Oh.
that's a bad idea, but I figure for
Okay.
any meetings that get hosted on here, it's
We could always trim it. We can get one of those like
exactly.
clapboards and clap there and then just edit it before we upload it.
If we can find it. All right, welcome to today's Tinkerbell contributors meeting. Glad to have everybody on the call. Guess friendly reminder of code of conduct is in the weekly meeting notes. I'll post that in the chats. Please feel free to put your name on there and any show and tell or topics you might have. I don't see any new faces, so unless you want to say something special hello, we will move on to the next, which I'm pretty excited about. Show and tell. Micah, take it away, my man.
Yeah, so I've just been making like prototype progress on like the proposal, and it's not an end-to-end demo yet. I probably need to spend about 3 more hours, and I could probably have an end-to-end like bare metal provisioning demo. So maybe by next time I'll have one of those. But I'll just kind of show what I have so far. I think I can share my screen. Let's see. Step 1, and then you'll have to let me know when you can see it, and if you can, and if I need to increase the font size. Is that good?
And you have excellent taste in terminals.
Thank you. So what I've done is I've taken the work that Jason has done on the Tinkerbell provider, the cluster API provider for Kubernetes, and I've extended it a little bit. So he's basically written out some structures in Go for hardware, for templates, and for workflows. And so I have modified those slightly and just pulled them out of the CAP-T provider code and just shoved them into the Tink code base, just for, again, for prototyping purposes. And there's a project called Cube Builder for Kubernetes where you can take a Go structure and then it will generate like your custom resource definition or CRD. So I've got that auto-generated, and it auto-generates. And I also created the workflow data for the like temporary data. I haven't stubbed out the API for that yet. But what I do have is I've ripped out, just for this branch, all the database like RPCs and the API calls that are not made by the worker, just for like to proof of concept this. So the like the gRPC the RPC interface, that protos. Here we go. There's the basically just workflow, and it's just these 5 RPCs. The get workflow context, actions, report action status, get workflow data, update workflow data. I don't really have the workflow data like components done, but I'll do that. I can do that shortly. So what I have stubbed out is, instead of talking to, again, to Postgres, it's talking to Kubernetes, and using the Kubernetes, there's a controller runtime library that makes it really easy to write like a Kubernetes client for a custom type. So normally in Kubernetes, you have like your CRUD type operations, get put or get post, like patch, delete, list on a type or watch, and maybe some others. There's a few other types, sub resource types, like and so you might have to like hard code those. Controller gen kind of does all this for you. You basically say, here's my type, I want to watch it, I might want to index it on a certain key, and so in this case, like I have a workflow. I'm using the controller, the control runtime library and saying, hey, index workflows on this worker index func. So basically get worker addresses out of the map of a workflow. So I'll just, to make this more concrete, I've got just like 3 example types or example objects here. On the left, I've just got some sample hardware. It's got, an address. I filled out like the DHCP, the MAC address stuff. I've got a very simple template that basically would just install Debian. So it would use a few actions like the image to disk, the write file, and then let's see what else I've got in here. Another write file. So I like write some cloud init data. I write some contents for more cloud init data, and then kexec, right? And then over on the left, or on the far, excuse me, on the far right, I've got a workflow where I say template ref, and then I reference the template by name. It's called right now just called Debian. And then I have a device map. So device normal sort of Tinkerbell today, you have, when you create a workflow, you say, create this device map of this device or template reference. Like I've got device 1 on line 12 with my template, this MAC address. So I've already, if I do kube control get CRDs, you can see the custom resource definition is my cluster. This is a K3S cluster. What I've done is just modified the sandbox Docker. Deploy Docker Compose. And I just added K3S. So this is just like an easy way to shove basically Kubernetes in a Docker Compose container that is reachable by my Tink server. I've added another component, a control loop, and I'll show what that does in a second. And I have the workflow data, templates, workflows, and hardware. I'm not using workflow data yet. So I've already created the hardware. There's my SM01-O YAML. If I want to get the YAML root view, okay. Again, you already saw that. Same for the templates. I've already just kubectl apply created a template. What I haven't yet done is created the workflow. So over here, what I'll do in this is the second tab. I'm just running let me increase the font size. Kubernetes kube control get workflows -w. So it's a watch output JSON, and I'm just deleting from the JSON the managed field refs. It's just kind of extra verbosity that you don't need. So there's no workflows yet. So I'm going to leave that running in this tab, hop back over, kubectl apply -f config CRD examples workflow. So I have that workflow that references the machine that I've created in the template. Okay, created it. You'll see 2 entries here because this is a watch, so it continually updates. The first one is just the spec. So there's no status yet. It's just a reference to the template and the device map. I have the controller process that I referenced is watching for any new workflows. And when it does that, it will do basically the join and say, oh, okay, I see this workflow template. I'm going to interpolate it and create and set the status of that new workflow to all these steps. So there's the raw data here, but then I've made sort of concrete types on the CRD for actions and within the template. So you can see, like, I've got all those things of the image to disk, the write file, the second write file, and then the kexec. And this looks very familiar. You see volumes and the worker ID and everything that's been interpolated from that device_1 template mapping. Okay, nothing interesting yet, but you see the state on all this is pending. Nothing's happened yet. So what else? The other thing I've done is I don't have, let me go back here. I don't have the worker all done, or I'm not going to modify the worker at all for an end-to-end demo. But what I did do just for my own testing is I created another command where I created a virtual worker. I copied the worker code base and stubbed out any Docker calls. So instead of talking to Docker runtime, it just returns successes. Just again, simplicity, happy path case. Yes, we need to figure out failures and all that, but just for demonstration purposes. So it's the worker without actually talking to Docker. So run. So I've got this little script here. It's setting some of the environment variables I need to do here. And so do it up here. The required like logging environment variables. So I run my virtual worker, set the ID to the MAC address. Here's the Docker registry that passing in the username, the registry username, and everything. So let's run that. And I'll actually hop over to the other tab. And you can see in this that we have state running on the first action. I'll hit enter. So you can see, okay, the second action is running. The worker's running in the background. Now it's success, ran for 4 seconds. The next action is running. This is a watch, so it's continually getting updated. After 7 seconds, success. I just did a random sleep between like 5 and 9 seconds or something. And then you can see, okay, the last action state success and ran for 8 seconds, and the whole workflow is marked as success. And you can see the runtime for each action. So that's sort of like the demo that I have today, just showing, okay, I have a virtual worker talking to the Tink API, reporting it's getting actions to run, actually running them, and then Kubernetes on the back end. Again, this is just kubectl. I'm doing kubectl watch to see sort of the status of everything. And then I can go over to the worker log, and you can see, okay, it's getting current context, current action state, pulling image. It's not actually pulling, but it's just, mocked out, container remove, action container exited, the normal stuff that you'd expect to see from a worker, because again, this is just the same worker code, but with stubbed out calls, and then completing the workflow. And then at the end, reach the end of the workflow. So it's again, early. The next step, and I've already started this and done most of the work on that I think I need to do on boots, but would be to have boots all similarly read from Kubernetes, respond with DHCP machine data, so that I can have something come up, ask for an IP address, get my get the hook image and boot and be on its merry way and actually do all this stuff. So that's kind of the next step that I want to do for a demo. But that's what I've got today. So I just wanted to show that off.
It's pretty sweet, dude.
Great job. Thanks for sharing. Pretty awesome.
I like that stubbed out functionality. I've been adding that to various things over time to help with development speed. So if that's something that can be inline and added to these tools, I think it would be really useful.
Yeah, I right now it's just happy path case, and I thought about adding like either like some counter to say fail after X error checks, or fail random, like have some sort of random failure, but make sure that it fails somewhere in the state so that you can test for other failures. It'd be pretty easy to open a PR for even just that virtual worker aside from all this stuff, because it's, again, I'm not planning on changing the worker API at all for this change, but yeah.
What's up, Dan?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I'm intrigued. So Jason cleverly added a deadline to himself to get Cluster API Tinkerbell doing HA and a variety of other things by tomorrow. So he's that's why he's not here. So I'm wondering, he's doing all of that at the moment. How much work is going to be required for him to kind of backport and kind of make use of all the work that you've done?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think there's going to be too much work, mostly because so there's the cluster API types, and then there's also the like Tinkerbell types. So this is really only changing the Tinkerbell types. It would actually, I think, make like a CAPI provider to do something like this a lot simpler, because right now the CAPI provider needs to talk to the Tinkerbell API, sync like status of all these things into Kubernetes CRDs. If they're natively Kubernetes like CRDs, then there's just none of the syncing. It's just another controller that's watching these statuses, creating these objects, and relying on all the Tinkerbell components to also just do the same thing, to say create a workflow for a machine, or a template and a workflow for bootstrapping a Kubernetes node, Tinkerbell just takes over. It's not having to sync all this data around.
Okay. Cool.
Right on. Thanks, Micah.
Yeah. The one other thing I want to do too is like the newest version of Kubernetes now has some tracing, like some distributed OTel tracing stuff. So I would love to be able to show like a trace that for an action or something that goes all the way from like a worker through Tink to Kubernetes to see like that breakdown and that waterfall of like, here's the things that happened to like provision a machine. I think that'd be super cool.
Yeah, we still need to add tracing to Tink worker, because I did like the basic plumbing in Tink, but I didn't realize how much there was in worker. So I'm gonna come back and do another PR for that. Like that would get you that.
Yes.
Boots has already got it, and oh gosh, I've patched so much stuff. I forgot.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I think
server has it already too.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I've seen it in Tink server. The other really cool demo, I don't know if I'll get to it by next time, but would be PB&J, and being able to integrate that, because it's just at the end of the day a controller watching workflows, looking for its own worker name and reaching out and doing stuff like booting or whatever.
Yeah, PB&J and Hook are next on my list. So for tracing.
Cool. Yeah, so that's my demo.
Awesome. Right on. Okay, moving on here. Topics. Looks like Thomas, you've added some comments here to my topic for who has access to Zoom recordings. Thank you.
So yeah, it happened that this question came up after the last meeting of where are the Zoom recordings, and we discovered that that Zoom meeting was had been created by somebody who's not an active contributor anymore, and Gianluca in this case, and we basically lost. We didn't have a way to get host anymore, especially as it was tied to credentials which that person didn't have access to anymore either. So it was kind of a shit show all around. So I created a new Zoom link, and I thought I had fixed all the references to it, but clearly I hadn't. So, they should all be fixed now, except for in Amy's calendar, which I can't legally access, I should say.
I'll give you AA access. It's fine. I'll fix it.
So it sounds like we lost the last 2 weeks of recordings, is what you're saying as well?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think. So the way that it was set up, well, yeah, I don't know. Really don't know. So what I have done is I have changed it for the laziest possible approach from my standpoint, where anybody who, this Zoom link can now be used for any Tinkerbell call randomly. And anytime that happens, it will email the host a recording of it. And that host can then upload it to YouTube.
Kubernetes 6 security has the same configuration, and you will get random people clicking the link at random times, realizing that it's not an active meeting.
I suspect as much, but. So let me know, Jacob, since you're the host at the end of the meeting, if you don't get an email, holler.
All right, will do. Thank you. All right, moving on. Thomas, you have an Aussie deprecation proposal.
Yes, I have a modest proposal. It's one that I've been sitting on for a long time. Now that the sandbox has switched to Hook, Aussie is, from the Tinkerbell perspective, just a pile of tech debt, and a large, sizable pile at that. So I put in there, perhaps quite aggressively, I could present, but honestly, it is like 3 paragraphs long. You can probably read it yourself in your own time. Please add comments. Jacob just dropped the link in the Zoom chat. What I am suggesting is if the proposal succeeds, that we change Ozzy's state from experimental to deprecated. And then in 60 days, we archive the repo so that it's read-only for anyone who wants to maintain their own private forks, but for everyone else, it'll be very clear that, it'll say like, and in fact, actually in the deprecation notice, we should explicitly say deprecated by hook in the case of the viewpoint of the Tinkerbell community. So yeah, I'm interested to hear any questions or concerns.
So I'm new to the OSI. I've only been digging through OSI for a couple weeks now.
Yeah.
I've noticed two major things there. One is what we call the massive pile of tech debt, or as I've described it to people, is OSI has thousands of goobers, right? Like somebody's trying to do something with a machine or some operating system or something,
yeah,
and they add a goober to OSI. Those goobers represent institutional knowledge or specializations for different environments and things. And I think the tech debt aside, those are the parts that are incredibly tricky to tease out and get working at the same fidelity, even with all of the pain around the code base that's there today. And this is
I
a
do
traditional
not
problem
disagree.
with replacing legacy systems,
Yeah.
but like OSI, especially in all those shell scripts that everybody, which I think are actually pretty decent shell, have just so much embedded knowledge in them. That I think that's, I didn't see like the kind of the transition plan into the glorious future, but like we probably need to talk through like some kind of strangler pattern or decomposition into hook.
Yeah.
And come at that like with a more technical plan as well.
So I'll say that the open source community for Tinkerbell doesn't use any of those scripts.
Oh, okay. So this is just our problem at Metal.
Those yeah. So those have been replaced by workflows and have never been used by the community.
Okay. So that's more of a Metal problem to transition those onto.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyone who is using those scripts, the only user I know of being Equinix Metal in this case, will need to carefully translate that institutional knowledge into workflows and hopefully share that institutional knowledge with the open source community.
Fair enough. Like we probably have to reverse engineer a lot of it just to document it.
So. Oh yeah, yeah. As a specific example, I was auditing the disk erase code earlier this week, and it is thorough. It actually is very thorough for handling many types of failures and falling back intelligently across different techniques. I haven't looked if we have a workflow already published. Dan might have more context than anyone else here on that. If there's what the level, I guess for disk erase as an example, are there workflows that have been based on the current shell scripts or?
So the only workflow that exists that copies OC behavior is the CPR stuff, which is a custom partitioning and RAID. That has been translated from much shell to a few lines of Go.
Nice.
And it effectively just passes the schema and does what it needs to do.
I posted a link in the chat. This is the Artifact Hub if you're not familiar with it. So we have a hub repo in the Tinkerbell org where you can kind of share publicly these actions. This would ideally be a really cool place to move a lot of these shell scripts. One of the challenges with Ozzy is that it's not well understood, I think, either, right? There are multiple parts to it. It's an onion. It's an ogre, right? It's got layers, and so not all of it's right. If you don't understand that parts of it correspond to workflows and parts of it correspond to Tink Worker and parts of it correspond to Hook, then when we say deprecate, right, you're just like, oh no, I'm losing everything. Like, what's going on, right? So maybe I don't know. It's hard. I don't want to say like it might be interesting to have documentation about a product that's getting deprecated, but I don't know.
Yeah.
maybe it's just some lines along like that, or pointing like, hey, go talk to certain people or in a Slack channel and we'll give you more details about Aussie, but it's not, yeah, there are, you have it in there, right? 18, 19, 20 lines, right? You talk about this, but I don't know if people grok it, right? You kind of see it and then you're just like, okay. But
Yeah, like,
Oh, I've seen it. I got a PR for tracing all that right now.
yeah, if there are things that we can clarify in this document, please drop a comment in there, because I do want it to be clear as mud for anybody who encounters Aussie. Like, I want to point to this proposal and say, you know, I don't want to leave anybody in the lurch, I guess, who finds this, you know, quite honestly, a fairly robust and production proven set of scripts. Here is an example. I realize it doesn't render for the actual markdown, basically showing that most of Aussie's code base is shell, and it is that pile of shell that we're talking about that is not included in Hook, for instance, but it is included in the workflows and the artifact hub stuff.
It is in the artifact hub.
Well, so the idea is at least
okay,
the things will get moved into there.
Because the shell code's like extractable, like it's not like all like tangled into OSIE. Like there's a few things where it branches into other parts of the repo, but for the most part, the scripts that seem to execute on systems seem pretty self-contained. So it may not be that huge of a lift to yank those out into a new repo and reintegrate them for Hook.
Yeah, it may not be.
It might not be what people want, but it would be the fastest path to making that old repo die, which would be a pretty big win just to drop, you know, like we're carrying around this 100-pound, you know, body on our backs.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can just drop a bunch of it and move a little bit faster.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. So anyways, leave comments. If you like the proposal, feel free to, you know, mention that. This is my first proposal, so I actually don't know what the proposal process is like. So I'm using this as my chance to explore it. That's all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Thomas. You have the next topic here, design principles.
Yeah, we did talk a little bit at the last meeting about design principles, and I had promised to go and send out a poll to the mailing list. I just wanted to mention that I haven't forgotten, but I haven't sent the poll. I was on call last week and plenty busy. Yeah, that's it. Not forgotten. And especially, and Micah's offer to help with writing the principles has also not been forgotten.
All right. Right on. Thanks, Thomas. All right, Dan, you got Hook internal usage?
Yeah, so to effectively kind of prove out some more usage of Hook, I'm currently right now on this screen doing a bunch of testing on things like C3 smalls and things like that. So what I'm effectively doing is I've merged together some code that effectively has Hook kernel and the Hook code RAM disk, but with some slightly different services that run. So instead of it doing a Tink workflow, it's going to be effectively hard coded just to basically write ESXi to a machine. So effectively, any machine now inside Equinix Metal, we can select iPXE as the OS of choice, and basically just give it an ESXi URL. It will then download the Hook kernel, the Hook RAM disk, and then execute that one hard-coded workflow. So effectively, this allows me at the moment to basically test out ESXi on the varieties of different hardware, basically by specifying one URL using Hook. So this is effectively going to allow us to prove things out very quickly internally.
So is this Tinkerbell without a Tinkerbell server?
Yes, this is basically
serverless Tinkerbell. That's a new service we can offer.
I'm out. it's effectively it's Tinkerbell hard coded with one operation in it, but effectively we have a number of different varieties of hardware that we want to kind of prove out quite quickly. So this is effectively how I'm going to kind of quickly do it for the time being. So I'm already, as I mentioned, I've already got hook booting on some C3 smalls, C1 smalls, and some other devices, and writing ESXi to /dev/SDA at the moment.
So is this a custom build of hook then? So you're adding like some new service inside of the Linux kit to do this work?
Yes. So it's
Okay.
Instead of it starting the Tink worker, it basically starts a project that I wrote a couple of years ago called Booty. But effectively that code went into image to disk. So now I'm kind of doing it backwards, but effectively all it does is it streams from a URL to disk and proves out what we're trying to do.
Right on. So I have to admit, I heard this idea last week and it got me thinking, and I tried to do this unsuccessfully, but I wanted to bring it up here if maybe somebody can steer me in the right direction. I tried to take upstream hook and then use Linux Kit to build another container. And then when I use a Pixie script to boot hook, I just add an additional init-rd and init-ramfs to see if when they got munged together, if hook and container D would just start up my additionally added service. Didn't get it working. It showed up in the file system. It was missing some parts, but has anybody played with this idea at all? Because this would be interesting, because then you could leave upstream hook alone and you could just tag on additional init-rds during the iPixie process, right? They get munged and then you could run this custom thing. So you would never have to rebuild hook.
Not
I mean,
personally.
like, yeah, because like that's typically how I've done init ramfs, right? Is I pull the pieces from an existing operating system and assemble it in a tempfs. And there's no reason you couldn't just compose them from like multiple images. In fact, while you were talking, I realized it wouldn't be that difficult to write something that took like a Docker container and another Docker container and streamed them out and built an ramfs from them. So your build process would emit Docker, and then you would be able to just rip them into an init ramfs, which would make it pretty quick development cycle and a little easier to work with, because init ramfs are hard to work with, right? Like you have to like un-CPIO them and screw around and re-CPIO them with the special options. And
yeah, which is why I tried it with Linux Kit, because they do all that magic for me.
Yep.
it's not that
But
magic, like CPIO.
That's fair. The basics that I didn't want to learn, I guess, that doesn't for me. But I could, yeah, like I said, I couldn't get them to munge correctly. Well, they did. It was in the right place. So full disclosure, I was just trying to start up a standalone kubelet actually. And it went into the right spot. I saw the files, but when hook spun up, the init, there must be something in the hook init, like Linux Kit, that says like, hey, go start these server. I don't know. Somehow I didn't get them all over, and so it didn't start. Files were there. I could see everything, but it didn't start.
Yeah, so all output from everything that starts underneath services, the var log, you'll find the name of the service and all of the standard out and standard error. So in there, you should find out why the things didn't actually start as expected.
Okay. I'll check that out. Thanks. Cool. I'll just a frivolous side thing that I was playing with when I heard what you were doing, Dan. So yeah, if I ever get it running, I'll show the demo or something how it worked. But yeah,
it makes you feel better. I was gonna say, if it makes you feel better, Jacob, I've tried to do this kind of surgery before, and I've read the docs and I've never gotten it to work. And it's like, I just don't understand. There's just something missing. So if
you ever want to pair on it, let me know. I went through this pain a long time ago. Just trying to get Zen working rootless, and I did get it working. But you know, it was kind of, the tooling wasn't that great afterwards, so it kind of went nowhere.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, I'll hit you up, Amy. Appreciate that. All right. Thanks, Dan. Any other questions or comments for Dan? Excited to see that happen. All right. Any other topics or conversations or anything anybody want to bring up?
I will be submitting OSI EPR in the next couple of days. I just have a little bit of touch-up work to do on it. I just wanted to talk, who's the best person to talk to about there's that Docker scripts functions.sh, which contains a lot of the magic. I hooked into that and I just need somebody to look at that understands that code to make sure that it's not going to blow everything up. The tests look okay. And it's kind of like auto tracing in shell, which is kind of terrifying. So that's just the one thing I've got going where I need a little attention.
I would venture a guess that Scott Garman or Manny Mendez might be good resources if you want to ping them.
All right.
There's probably other people, but yeah, those would be the top two that came to mind for me.
Thank you.
All right.
I guess
Any other? Yep.
I have one thing to celebrate, that our triage, or I should say our response time for the Tinkerbell repos has gone from 44 days in June to 6 days now on average.
Nice.
So,
Well played.
Yay.
we can still get, to a comfortable 3 or 4 day probably without a great deal of work. But I think this shows that we are being a lot more respectful of code reviews and issues being opened than we at least have been in June. So I'm really happy to see that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Thanks for all of your leadership there, Thomas. And just a plug for next Tuesday, same time, we will be having triage party. So if you're interested, yeah, please do show up.
I just make problems. That's all.
Nice. Awesome. Oh, we put it in the channel too, but all of our repos should now be, their default branch should be main. Just FYI, update your forks and your local clones.
Mine seemed to pick it up automatically. It was really nice. Like I got a notification that it changed for like my OC fork. And it said it changed. I didn't do anything and everything seems to still be working. So
Sweet.
GitHub kind of nailed
good
that.
to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done, GitHub. All right. GitHub response latency. Who was that, Thomas?
That was me. That was just documenting what I had mentioned.
Oh yeah, the triage. Yeah, GitHub, our issue responses. Yeah, not GitHub's, the service.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, yep, no, that's my fault.
So
yeah, that's an awesome one there.
Something I would like to say for a future meeting is talking about having a regular release cadence, but I will not endeavor to try to fight this in the remaining 10 minutes, but be warned that this is something that I want to talk about in the future after we have, some sort of values and roadmap. I would like to get a little bit more regular about having releases and having release notes that people can see. So.
And I think one thing is still kind of learning the Tink side is a cohesive release across some of the components so that I can grab something that I know is going to fit together.
Right.
Would be kind of nice.
It would be kind of nice. Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it would force integration points. That's kind of one of the things I immediately thought of when you said that, right? One of the things a scheduled release schedule does is forces the team to make sure everything works together every once in a while. And that could be really healthy for a project, even if it is kind of annoying as a developer.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully this is all like happening on every PR, but there are.
There's
forward
always
and backwards
something.
compatibility issues. You know,
Big complex software. There's always something.
yeah, this was always a complicated fight in Kubernetes land, and they made it work, but yeah, we can make it work too. So. Anyways,
Awesome.
future proposals.
Yeah, looking forward to that conversation.
All right.
Awesome. Any other topics or things to bring up? Did you just get something working there, Dan?
Yeah, I did. Sorry.
Well done.
Hopefully, I should have a pretty impressive demo in the next, hopefully, a couple of hours, but not quite ready yet.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
All right. Well, I'm gonna drop off.
Thank you, everyone.
See y'all later.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Have a good week, y'all. See ya.